The sun dipped low over the dusty plains as Eli Turner, a rugged frontiersman, guided his horse through the wilderness. He was heading toward the small town of Red Creek, hoping to trade furs before the winter set in. The air was still, too still. Then, a woman's scream split the silence. Eli spurred his horse toward the sound and found a wagon under attack by Comanche raiders. Arrows pierced the canvas top, and smoke rose as the horses panicked. A young woman fought to reload her rifle, trembling but fierce. Eli didn't hesitate. He drew his revolver and charged into the chaos. The fight was fast and brutal. When the dust settled, the raiders had vanished into the hills. Eli dismounted, his arm bleeding from a grazing arrow wound. The woman, Clara Bennett, as she introduced herself, stared at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "You saved my life," she whispered. Eli tipped his hat. "Just happened to be ridin' by, ma'am." But as the fire crackled between them that night, neither of them knew this encounter would change both their lives forever. Clara's wagon was wrecked, and her supplies were gone. She was stranded miles from town. Despite her protests, Eli insisted on escorting her back to Red Creek. The journey took 3 days through rough terrain. At first, they barely spoke. Clara was wary of the quiet man who'd risked his life for her. But as miles passed, her fear turned to curiosity. Eli shared little about himself, only that he'd once lost his family to raiders. At night, they sat by the fire. Clara noticed the gentleness behind his rugged face. He noticed her courage despite everything she'd endured. When they reached Red Creek, Clara turned to him. "You could have left me," she said softly. Eli shrugged. "Couldn't do that. My ma raised me better." What he didn't expect was that the town and Clara herself had something waiting for him that would test his heart more than any battle. Word of Eli's heroism spread fast. The townsfolk treated him like a legend. Clara's father, Judge Bennett, was especially grateful. "You saved my daughter," he said. "If there's anything I can do, name it." Eli only wanted to move on, but Clara's gaze made it harder to leave. Days turned into weeks as he helped her rebuild her wagon and taught her to shoot properly. They shared laughter, stories, and a growing bond neither could deny. One evening, the judge invited Eli to dinner. Afterward, he placed a deed on the table, a piece of land outside town. "For your bravery," the judge said. "A man like you deserves roots." Eli stared at the paper, speechless. But it wasn't the land that caught his heart, it was Clara's smile. Still, he feared his rough life had no place beside hers. "Maybe it's time you stopped running, Eli," Clara said quietly. "Maybe you've already found your home." Weeks later, the wind swept gently across Eli's new land. A small cabin stood half-built, and Clara stood beside him, her hands dusted with sawdust. "You really mean to stay?" she asked. Eli looked at her, the woman he'd once saved, and who had saved him in return. "If you'll have me," he said. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she nodded. "Then let's build it together." The plains stretched endlessly before them, no longer wild and empty, but full of promise. The same land that had once nearly claimed their lives now held their future. Eli took Clara's hand, rough and soft, and smiled for the first time in years. He thought he'd earned only a debt of gratitude that day, but what he truly earned was love, peace, and a place to belong.